Oui, oui, c'est tout bon, il marche. Parfait. Très bien, alors bonjour, on continue ce festival avec les conférences et j'ai le plaisir d'accueillir Dafna Feinholz qui est chef de la bioéthique et de l'éthique des sciences et des technologies à l'UNESCO. Dafna a travaillé à toute la rédaction des recommandations qui ont été faites sur l'éthique de l'intelligence artificielle. C'était un long travail qui a été fait avec les 193 membres États de l'UNESCO et qui va être présenté dans la conférence générale de l'UNESCO en novembre, donc dans un petit mois. Et Dafna nous fait le plaisir de venir nous les présenter un peu comment on appelle ça ? En avant-première, merci, je suis dans un théâtre, je devrais le savoir. Donc elle nous le présente en avant-première. La keynote est en anglais, elle est diffusée en live sur la page YouTube du Aya Festival. Et puis on va ensuite la traduire pour les personnes qui voudraient la suivre également en français d'ici quelques jours. Je vous remercie et bienvenue Dafna, merci de venir jusqu'ici.
Merci beaucoup Laura pour l'introduction et surtout pour l'invitation. Je suis très contente d'être ici parmi vous. Oui, donc, oui, tout d'abord, il faut...
J'ai dit que tu le faisais en anglais.
It's true. Oh my God, sorry, yeah. Okay, like this? Okay, sorry, yes, it's going to be in English, in fact. So first of all, thank you very much for this nice introduction and for this and for the invitation. And yes, it's very important, first of all, to let you know that this recommendation is not yet adopted. And so it's really important to make this clarification, as Laura said. I really can't see anything, but I hope that you can see me. And it has been, as Laura said, it's a very long process. Maybe if I go, maybe I can start from there, and then I'll come back. I was not going to present this, but maybe since we're talking about it, and then how do I go back? Can I go back? Voilà. Et après, comment je fais pour les full...
Perhaps you can go with that and then with just the...
Non, ça va être comme ça, oui. Okay. Mais après... Voilà. So this is I will start. That was one of the ones of the end, and I was not sure if I was going to present it. But since we are going to focus more on the recommendation, I will start with this. So. What kind of instrument are we developing at UNESCO? It's called a recommendation, but in legal terms, it means it's a legal document. It's not legally binding, but nonetheless, all the member states have to sign this, adopt this recommendation, and they have an obligation to report every 4 years to UNESCO what they are doing in order to implement it. So it's halfway. It's not just a simple declarations of some principles. It is not also a binding document in the legal sphere like a convention, but this is a recommendation, so it's kind of halfway. And I want to, the reason why I want to go a little bit more into detail on this one that I was going to skip is because it's very much related to one of the last, I'm kind of improvising because I prepared my presentation, but after listening to the previous ones, I'm trying to adopt what I have to try to match what we have been discussing the whole day. So I just wanted to come back to this one because one of the things that I thought super important that was discussed in the previous session is about the participation of the wide participations of those who are going to be in a way affected and not necessarily in a bad way, but that it's pertinent for them what is going to be happening with these technologies. So the way in which this recommendation as all the normative instruments that UNESCO has been developed, and I will come back to then in 1 minute, is in a very participatory way, in a very inclusive way. And I think this is why I wanted to start with this. So first of all, it's a record time. It's the first time that we develop a recommendation in only 2 years. Normally it takes 4. It's the longest one in UNESCO's history, and it's the first one that has to be negotiated virtually, which is also something really telling about the time we're living, because these things are implied a lot of disciplinary and independent discussions and then negotiations, and this happened virtually. So this is really, I think, the sign of the times. COVID made it very long and not long, much demanding, but also allowed us to have this new ways of approaching these processes. So as you can see, we started in 2020, and the Director General appointed 24 experts. They are independent experts, and I think this is very important for you to understand. They are not representing their governments, and they are representing all the six geographical areas of the world in UNESCO, which means we have really Arab countries, African countries, Latin America, Asia, Africa, Europe, North America, etc., etc. And the idea is also to have a gender balance, but not only that, a balance in the professional background. We had at least one philosopher for each of the regions. We have, of course, people that have legal expertise and background, all of them knowledgeable about AI and AI in the different domains of work of UNESCO. And they also had, for example, experience with working with NGOs, with civil society, or of course we needed to have those who are specialists in the technologies. So we had people who were experts in deep learning, machine learning, etc., etc. Then they proposed a draft, and this draft went into a very long process of consultation, extensive, and it was multi-stakeholder representation. We did public online consultations in 11 regions of the world. We had consultations with civil society too, to have their views. The consultations included all kinds of stakeholders, for example, academia, private sector, again, lawyers, developers, all kinds of stakeholders that could be involved. And we had also a specific consultation with the UN system, because, as you know, these technologies are also dealt with by many UN agencies, either by human rights or from the point of view of telecommunications. So or UNICEF, that is also developing guidelines to protect children. So we had a very wide consultation with the UN system as a whole, and also the UN systems individually provided with inputs. So we, in addition to the online consultations, we had an online consultation for everybody, and we got more than 50,000 comments back only on the online consultation. Those comments then were sent back. They were, well, of course, they went to a very thorough process of analysis, and then it went back to the ad hoc group to see how they could include these recommendations. And they were very important things that we gathered from these consultations. For example, some were speaking about some of the issues that you have been mentioning in the morning. What about co-creation? What about not thinking about technology as being the solution for everything? Why everything? Why should we go into this techno? Thinking that the technology is the salvation of everything, and everybody it's like immediately a symbol of progress or positiveness. Maybe not. Of course, everybody was about expressing the need of being inclusive and not leaving anyone behind, which is one of the UN main objectives. So this group, after having a very after a specialized analysis of the information, they included the comments of the consultation into the draft, which then went only to member states for their review and comments. So it has like two phases. The first phase included really the super wide society as it could get, including private sector, as I said, prepared by independent experts not representing governmental interest, and then it went already only to governments. And then we got comments from 48 member states and 2 observers, and then those comments were integrated into the draft by us, by the Secretariat, and then we went into the phase, which is one of the crucial ones, where is the negotiations between the government, those who are representing the governments. And I think, so this was really time-consuming, again, because of the COVID, because of the new modalities, etc. But we had, at the end of April, we had the Intergovernmental Committee that negotiated and accepted and agreed on a draft text. And I have to say, and I will say it afterwards, it's a very strong recommendation. It's a very complex recommendation. It's very detailed. It was very ambitious at the beginning, and it was not so sure how much was going to survive after the negotiations. And we have to say that it was quite preserved. The original text was quite preserved as it was presented at the very beginning. So now I'm going to start from the very beginning of my presentation. Voilà. So first what I wanted to do, and this I'm going to do fast. No, first, this is not going to be so fast. This is first just to say why UNESCO is doing it, because I think that is also something that is important, because normally, probably not you, but I'm always facing these challenges when I decided where to work. When I decided to work on bioethics, the most important challenge I had is to explain to a person in the street what are you dealing with? What is bioethics? Wow. Okay, that was the first challenge. Now, second now is like, why UNESCO? Because when UNESCO normally is associated with World Heritage sites. So it's like, why UNESCO that is dealing with World Heritage sites is working on artificial intelligence. So this is why I also want to start telling you about this. So in our constitution, it says that since the wars begin in the minds of men, it's in the minds of men that the defenses of peace must be constructed, and the reason the way in which these defenses of peace will be constructed is through the international cooperations in the areas of work of UNESCO, which is human and social sciences, natural sciences, culture, education, and culture, education, communication. Thank you, Vincent, and communication. And the idea is always to make sure that this international cooperation in these areas of work of UNESCO will be linked to a series of values. And these values, the aim of these values is to make sure that they enhance the well-being of the society, of individuals and groups. And that is how we can achieve peace. And again, this is what I already said, ensuring that ethics is the guiding principle for scientific and technology progress is the very reason of UNESCO. Meaning, again, if you link the science and technology development with values, that's what ethics is about. So I will definitely try to focus my presentation on what is ethics, how we understand it, and why and how is it embedded in the recommendation, and why are we trying to achieve, and try to focus a bit more on the area of culture. we have been applying these ethical principles, and we are the only organization that have produced normative instruments in the area, like the last point that you see, the Declaration of Human Genome and Human Rights, the Declaration on Genomic Data, the Bioethics and Human Rights, Ethical Principles on Climate Change, and now we are working on artificial intelligence, but we are also working, for example, on issues which are related to bioethics, which is like now with COVID, we have advisory bodies like the International Bioethics Committee and the World Commission of Bioethics and the World Commission of Ethics and Science and Technology, that both of them issued statements saying vaccines should be a common good, and they were calling also to give away the patents. So, as I said, we embarked in this process, as I already explained to you, and the idea is to try to find a way to guide the development of these technologies in a way that can benefit humanity and promote sustainable development. One thing that I want to stress here, that in many cases, ethics is sometimes misunderstood as either only a set of principles or something that hinders innovation and progress, and which is wrong. Those two assumptions are wrong about ethics. This is one of the things I want to try to prove. The idea is we don't want to hinder innovation, but we just want to make sure that it works for the good of humanity. And of course, the big question is, and this is about our ethics again, who decides what is good for humanity? And the idea of this instrument in particular is to assist member states in facing the changes and the challenges that are streaming from AI technologies and preparing them to respond. I will go a bit fast because I don't think this is so important. As you know, the impact of I want to say something different, something else before I go to this. With all the examples, I'm going to try to go very quickly now about the impact of artificial intelligence in our life. Is also one of the reasons why the General Conference means the ministers of education or foreign affairs that are the counterparts of UNESCO that make the decisions and give the mandate to the organization to work on something, and they gave us the mandate to work on this recommendation. And the question was, why UNESCO? Because there are so many organizations working on this, so why UNESCO? So one of the reasons is the one I told you, that we have more than 25 years working on this issue, issuing the only global instruments that are existing to provide a framework that will allow member states to then develop legal frameworks or concrete ethical guidelines for ethics committees or for practitioners on how to apply some technologies. And the other one is because the impact of AI is basically affecting or is evident in all the work of UNESCO. It impacts directly research. It has been said also before in one of in the roundtables before that now that, for example, on climate change for deforestation, they wanted to go and to work with policymakers on how to go and make informed decisions, how to prevent deforestation, and then suddenly you have an app that gives you the answer. So first of all, that impacts the way you do research. People are not so much interested about that. And that you also don't go through the process with the decision makers about trying to assess what will be the consequences if you do that, and how can you address the issue of deforestation, because you just have to go and open an app and they will give you, this will happen. So there is there is also the danger of losing the interest for the young generations of of research, but also of the critical thinking about the decisions that we are taking. So it's also on the human and social sciences, not only the natural sciences, that it has an implication. On education, as we know, it's changing a lot the way the education is being implemented. It has implications in health, which we deal with through the bioethics program, and on communication. What can I say? I mean, about hate speech, all what is happening in the network. So that's why it's another reason why UNESCO is so much embarked in, or the General Conference decided to give us this mandate. And again, as I was saying, you can see here, and I will go very quickly on this, to give you some examples because you know about the impact of artificial intelligence in our life. Also in transport for example, with the automatic weapons, weapons, that's another thing, automatic cars, justice, the marketing, agriculture, but I will go because I don't want to spend my time on this. For example, in health, you have a lot of things. For example, there is true that there is a way of to use the speed, because this is one of the most important advantages of AI, that they can process a lot of information very quickly, and they can be a very helpful tool. For example, in health, like this image recognition, they can speed up the diagnosis and process the treat for more patients. They could improve diagnosis accuracy, but that's not always the case. During COVID, for example, of course, they also helped to find and do the tracking easier, and to try to also solve the problem of having the hospital so much to be so crowded. But at the same time, it posed a little bit of an issue, like, okay, what happens with all the information that we're giving? What will happen with all these tracking systems that they put in place? What will happen with that information after the crisis? Who is going to handle it, and how, for example? The other prominent problem that could be associated in this case is the potential bias that might come from using narrow systems that are trained on a certain population with specific characteristics, but then they are applied to a diverse patient population, which is always the problem. And this is something that we also will see in, for example, I will go for the law. As you know, judges, when they have to, of course, the slides will be available, so I will not go into all the details, but you will be able to see them in detail afterwards. But you know that one of the things that judges have to do is to go and revise precedent cases of when they're in front of a case. And of course, AI can do an analysis super quick. But then again, these algorithms are used for example, they are increasingly used for risk assessment through the criminal justice system, including in pre-trial, sentencing, parole, and juvenile justice rehabilitation. However, offenders and their lawyers often do not have access to the information regarding how these algorithms calculated the specific score, which may negatively affect the right to a fair trial and a due process. Another very important thing is that if you identified hotspots, because these algorithms go and try to identify the hotspots, but if you identified them more on prime officers to expect to have problems there, you are more likely to stop or to arrest people in those places because of a prejudice rather than the need. Because, of course, you only gather information from where you have it, but that doesn't mean that's the only places where you have these kind of problems. Environment is another very important thing. I just gave you the example of how, and in fact, it's important to say that what I said before, it's not in detrimental of the good use of AI for environment. That was not my intention. AI can be, in fact, useful and very useful in order to promote, really? Okay. Okay, so I will go. Okay, so for environment, for example, it is true that we have a lot of things that we can do for environment and use AI for that, which is great. But it is also true that it's almost nobody has taken into account how are we harming environment by using AI, because we are consuming a lot of electricity and we are consuming a lot of minerals. So I'm going to the most important part, which is the artistic creation. So in general, all types of content that can be used in artistic creation assist artists to minimize mundane tasks, and they can focus more on the core of the creation. Of course, the content of natural language processing techniques are now capable of assisting writing poetry and things that we know and we are going to see in the different performances. But we can also see now how portraits that are produced by AI are sold 40 times more expensive than the original estimation for an original one. And of course, you are all more familiar with startups such as Weebits and all these creations of documents and papers that can be created by AI. But I think there is also things here that we have to take into account, which is sometimes the options that we as users are exposed are reduced, because they are also these issues that are given to us, like because you did some searches before, so this is what they offer to you. And what happens if you want to know more and to listen to different music? What about when we create? What about the message? What about the sense? It was discussed in the previous roundtables as well. But what happens with that? I mean, is it only putting together some elements, or is really wanting to give a sense and a message? I'm going to just, I know they are going to speak about diversity and gender, so I will not stop here. I will just say that the gender gaps are super clear and increasing in the AI world. And I will go very quickly now to finish about what are the ethical issues and what are the principles of the recommendation. So can we define artificial intelligence? It was said before, and it's true. It's not something that was born yesterday, no. But in fact, it's not only one definition of artificial intelligence. So the approach that the experts of UNESCO that prepared the recommendation took is, what is it in artificial intelligence that can erase any ethical issues? And it's this, that AI systems are systems which have the capacity to process data and information in a way that resembles intelligent behavior, and that typically includes aspects of reasoning, learning, perception, prediction, planning, or control. If you read this, you can think this is about a human being. So this is what is worrying, that they can do things that a human being can do. And that's why, through the ethical lenses, we are worried because, as I just said before, and I'm not going to read all this, but the problem is that they are used as tools for decision-making, as the ones that I told you. And and I could have given you many more, like, do I give a loan in a bank? Do I hire somebody? Do I score students? I'm sure you remember the case of the UK. So this is why, because they are used to make decisions. And of course they can, and that's why the example of gender was important, because they can reproduce, and also what the examples I gave you about justice, because they can reproduce also the bias and the prejudice that exist already. It is so important that, as you can see, All these are initiatives, either at the regional or the national level, to promote, to try to put together standard setting and of ethical strategies, how to deal with them. But at the same time, each of them come from a very different point of view. They come either from the policy point of view, from the economical point of view. So for what it is sure is that we really need a global platform, a normative platform that put together all these different initiatives that we have at all the different regional levels. And UNESCO is the only global one that can provide with this framework. And how are we understanding ethics here? And this is the other thing I wanted to say. Ethics is not about a bunch of principles that is written in a code. Ethics is about a process that is it's a normative process that is dynamic. It's not only law and it's not only human rights. It's a process of decision making. It is about making explicit which are the values that lie behind the decisions and the policies that we adopt. It is about the constant reflection about what are the new challenges that the rapid development of technology are posing, and if by chance we need even to create new human rights to protect. And it's only the constantly reflection that we need, because not all the responses of these problems are found in law. So what are the relevant questions that we have to put ourselves from the ethical point of view? There are many there, but only one, for example. How can we attack the democratic? This is not the one I want to. This one. How should our institutions and our laws be redesigned so that they serve the well-being of people and society, and so that society is safe from technological development, and in particular artificial intelligence? So here you see the 4 values. The recommendation, which is something that is very specific for the recommendation, is that it has values, principles, but it goes beyond that, which is also the difference with other documents and initiatives that we have all around the world, that it also has concrete policy actions. So these are the values, and one of the values that I want to hear underline is the one on ensuring diversity and inclusiveness, because it also relates not only to women, it's only about all the marginalized groups, and it also relates to what was discussed in the previous one. Who is making the decisions? Who is making the decisions about how are we going to regulate these technologies and how are we going to apply? We, of course, need, and you will see this in the principles and the policy actions. You will see them afterwards. I will not stop here. But as you can see, we have one of them is culture, gender education, and one in culture. And as you can see, there is ethical governance and stewardship, which includes, for us, everyone. So these are concrete policy actions. And the one on culture in particular, and I will finish. This policy area calls on culture, on member states to incorporate AI in the preservation, enrichment, and promotion of tangible, documentary, and intangible cultural heritage. Recommendation warns from the extinction of endangered languages and indigenous languages and knowledge. Calls on member states to promote AI education and digital training for artists and creative professionals in order to facilitate their use in their professions. But I have to say that it also includes the importance of having these skills to all society, because it again goes back to the question of who decides and how do we include civil society and all the other groups and not only the hierarchy. Puts emphasis on ensuring diversity, supply, and cultural expressions. Recommendation acknowledge more research in the need on the intersection of AI and intellectual property. And one of the things I will say, and this will be the last one, is that humans have to be in the loop all the time, never be replaced. And I will I will just finish with this one. Why is it important? Because it's the only global one that includes the voice of the global sound. The language is very strong. Again, it's pluralistic, takes the different approaches of different cultures of the world regarding technology. Not all the societies regard to technology the same way. Multicultural, multidisciplinary, multi-stakeholder, emphasis on the policies, not only on the principles and values, and addresses some issues that have not been addressed before. And here you have some links that might be of your interest if you want to follow more about what we have, what we are doing. And also there is a link to a video that explains very, very easy, I think, the main ethical issues of AI and how we are trying to address it at UNESCO. Thank you, and sorry for taking longer.
Merci beaucoup Dafna. Et puis, alors, je suis réjouie de voir ces recommandations éthiques. Je croise vraiment les doigts pour qu'elles soient votées en novembre, telles quelles, parce qu'elles me paraissent vraiment une réflexion très poussée là-dessus. Si vous avez quelques questions ou plusieurs questions, je vous propose, Dafna se tient à disposition maintenant, le temps qu'on fasse la transition avec la prochaine keynote, qui continuera sur exactement la même lancée, avec un focus sur la diversité. En quoi la diversité dans l'intelligence artificielle va être la plus grande nécessité à venir dans les prochaines semaines, mois et années à venir. Donc on continue sur ce sujet et on se retrouve ici à 16h avec le panel de Does AI Need Its Own Guerrilla Girl, qui sera en français et en anglais traduit. Merci infiniment Dafna. Merci.